You are listening to a Raptors podcast, the place every week for all things Raptors. Get ready and never underestimate the heart of a champion. Welcome back, one and all, to a Raptors podcast. I am your host, as always, Lucky Roberts, and it was another disappointing week for the Raptors among a string of disappointing weeks. This week, Raptors had back-to-back games against the Hawks, and then before that, they had a game against the Knicks. The Knicks one that they dropped in a saddening fashion. It was a pretty close one all up until the end. The Raptors, had a bit of a gap, a 10-point one, and they sort of just string it together there at the end to push it within, single digits and really make a game out of it. And it was, done completely behind, the big three there. They're all in the 20-point mark there. Schroeder also joins them. And this week, the Raptors offense sort of exploded in this first couple of games. Against the Hawks on Friday, it wasn't really the same output, more of a usual 104-point output from the Raptors. But in this one against the Knicks, it was, everybody getting in on the fun. OG 5 for 11 from 3. He was draining them from every single spot on the court. Pascal Siakam, he also had a 3. Scottie Barnes is now just a regular shooter. You expect him to knock it down, and it looks so good coming off the hands. It's exactly what you wanted to see developmentally for him, and he's shown that he can knock it down. He was 3 for 8 in this game, 7 for 13 from the field as a whole. Not getting as many, rebounds and assists, but he's still there at Pascal Siakam's usual, numbers, and Siakam's taken a bit of a dip because of that. But this was really OG's night. And when he was hitting his threes in the corner, when we were getting him the ball, that's when the Raptors were going on their runs and really, taking it to the Knicks. But the Raptors defense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And usually it's been, that end that has been held up. But, you look at Podol, and he just was not able to stop, some pretty easy guys. Julius Randle had a great performance. Barrett went off. Brunson as well, sort of their best 3 players there. And you have Quentin Grimes and Josh Hart. Quentin Grimes shot out of a cannon in that first half, sort of similar to how Caleb Martin went off against the Raptors in the Heat game. He was just on fire from 3, and there was some discourse, of course, between Quentin Grimes and Scottie Barnes online. The fans going back and forth because there were some comparisons being thrown between the two. And this game, it would have seemed valid. Quentin Grimes has 19 points. He's really efficient. Scottie Barnes has a couple more points, a couple more rebounds, a couple more assists, but, more defensive effort. But Quentin Grimes was amazing in this one. And I know that's not his game. He's averaging like 6 points on the season, but he really took it to Scottie in a game that, the Knicks fans needed to survive the oncoming slot of stuff that was going to be thrown their way. But they, Quentin Grimes played his part, and the Knicks played their part and win. They moved to 13-9 on the season, and the Raptors fell to 9-14 by the end of this week. But, just as a whole, Malachi Flynn also had a couple of threes. He was hitting it 4 for 5. He has had a better week so far, and he's, probably his best week as a pro. He had a great game in this one, another really impressive game against the Hawks. He was hitting threes and stuff. The most recent one against the Hawks. He had a really good game as well, putting up 11 points. But, the Raptors didn't follow suit. But I'll get to that one soon enough. But, it's a game that the Raptors were expected to lose against the Knicks. I'm watching it with my mom, and she points to me, and she's like, Raptors supposed to be winning this one? And I'm like, no. It's an acceptable loss, and at this point in the season where, by the end of this week, like I said, we're 9-14. We're 11th in the East. We could achieve 10th, but why would we want to achieve 10th? After achieving 9th last season and seeing what that got us. There's no benefit for that. For us at all. And so, I'm severely on the side of, if we're playing the Knicks, let's have a nice offensive game and let's let them have it. And I think that was what we did. And, I'm never going to root for a loss, but I'll be accepting of it. I prefer a win. And that's, exactly how I felt after this second game against the Hawks here. The first game against the Hawks, I apologize, where the Raptors win 135-128, and it was the second just huge offensive explosion by the big three, OG, Scottie, and Pascal. Pascal was the leader in this one, but Scottie was right behind him. Just look at these stats, man. Pascal has 33, 7, 7. Scottie has 27, 9, and 6. A block. OG with 22. 10 for 13 from the field. Scottie, 11 for 14. And they're both hitting threes. Pascal was hitting threes. He was 5 for 6. He was on fire from the corner. He was hitting every single thing. The one thing that this team can't seem to shoot anymore is the free throw. It's been a constant issue, since the championship year. And I guess, they were acceptable at it when Norm Powell and, Freddie and Kyle Lowry were still here during the bubble season. And, they had that amazing series against the Celtics. But other than that, since then, it's been a huge issue for this Raptors team. And I feel like we've been talking about it forever. So it has to have been something they've been practicing or at least looked at. But it continues to be an issue. And my friend is going to have to drop Scottie Barnes from his fantasy team because he's tanking free throws. He's just missing all these free throws, and he's trying to be good at free throws, in a categories league. And it's disappointing because, you want to have your team's, quote-unquote's best player on your fantasy team. It's just like to cheer, you get that double excitement for every single thing that he does. I have Scottie, I have Pascal on my team, so I've got that covered. But yeah, anyway, it's just disappointing to see, the missed free throws. Pascal, 5 for 6 from 3, 4 for 7 from the free throw line. And these are just, it's a free throw for a reason. And I know that's cliche, but it's true. It's disappointing. Gary Trent had 12 points in this one, the only one who showed up off the bench. I've liked what I've seen from Achua off the bench more and more, and it seems as if Darko is sort of forcing Achua into a bigger role, forcing Malachi Flynn into a bigger role, because I think a really important thing with his tenure as a Raptors coach is going to be able to develop these guys. If he can develop Koloko, because we're not going to be a good team, right? If he can develop Koloko, if he can develop Grady Dick, if he can develop Malachi Flynn, if he can develop Precious Achua, or even Gary Trent, and he's not, and I know their ideas on offensive basketball conflict very much so, exact opposites of this spectrum there, but they've got to find a way to work together, or Gary's got to be moved. And I do think one of those two things are going to happen. It's just Gary's value is putrid right now because he's not playing well, because Darko's not putting him in a place to succeed. But, at least, he's putting Achua in a place to succeed. He's putting Malachi in a place to succeed. And he's giving them minutes. And they can learn and they can develop, because it's hard to develop when you don't have in-time game time. And I think, it's going to be beneficial to see, okay, what do we got in these guys? Because we're not going to be winning games. And if they do fail, if they do have some learning bumps along the line, it's better for us because, once again, top 5 protected pick, we need to start tanking some games. But in an East, especially the bottom of the East that's been tanking games as much as they have, it's going to be a little tough to see that go through. It's going to have to take a little bit of luck through the lottery, or else this whole season will be a wash. But, we've had a couple of wash seasons in a row now, but I think we, deserve what we've got coming as one of the, best teams in the last decade. It might take a little bit to rebuild, and, that's what it's going to be. And you can see sort of as this season goes on, my emotions surrounding the team sort of deteriorate, just being like, accepting, starts with anger, just the different ways of grief. And I'm just trying to, blunt force my way into the acceptance stage, because I know I'm going to have to get there eventually, and it might as well be as soon as possible, because this team is not good in its current form. Even with the better offensive showings, it's just not worth it. But it is good to see a win. And I was much happier after the Raptors beat the Hawks than I was after the Knicks lost to the Raptors, even though that's what I should be rooting for. But I'm rooting for wins. I'm rooting for this team to be good. But if it's not going to be happening, I will also accept that fate as well. But yeah, in this Hawks game, The Raptors sort of turned it on in the third quarter. They put up 40 in that one, 33, 32, 31. They were scoring at will, but it was a huge effort from Pascal, which every single big win seems to be. Every single high score, it's just on the shoulders of Pascal. Scottie, he'll come in the fourth and he'll, make some plays then when it's a close game. But if we're going to win a game and demolish a team, it's going to be on the back of Pascal. And it was, that was seen today. And it was a bounce back game for Podol, who also can't shoot free throws. And Schroeder, the jury's still out on him. I don't really love what we're getting from Schroeder at this current moment, but he's better than anything else we got, So it's interesting, how to think how Gary Trent feels about it, but that's a story for another time. So back-to-back amazing games for the Raptors. 3 main starters, 3 main, even Jesus. 3 main players with any semblance of value. And you go into the second Hawks game after a win, feeling excited, and the Hawks just take the reins from the beginning. And the Raptors were playing down by 10 from the get-go. They end up losing by 21 from a fallout in the fourth. The Hawks hang 40 in that one. And it was just a masterclass from Trae Young, who's also on my fantasy team, so I will take it. But he had 38 in this one, and he was hitting threes from the logo, from the deep hash, from behind the hash, anywhere you would let him shoot it. And that's just... But Trae in both of these games was just so good, man. He had 35 in this, the first one against the Hawks, and 17 assists. And I mean, like I've been saying, that's beneficial for my fantasy team. I'll take that any day. And he's hitting threes from mid-court, from the hash, and that's how he does it. It was a really impressive performance, and he carried that on, as like I was saying, into this second game where he has even more, 38. It's a really impressive showing. You look at the 8 turnovers as well, and you think, okay, so how good was he? But you're gonna take that if he's putting up 17 assists in a game, if he's putting up 11 assists like he did in this second one. And there's been some talks that the Hawks are interested in one Pascal Siakam, and I will continue to say that the deal probably should be done, but I don't want to see Pascal leave. So, it's a similar thing where it's like, oh, I want to win because I'm happier and I enjoy it, and I'm never going to root for losing. But just thinking about it, we probably should lose, and thinking about it, we probably should trade Siakam. And one of the teams that are mentioned in the media that to be interested in Siakam is the Hawks. And you look around their team, they have a lot of talent that's not really being used. A lot of, Grady Dick type picks that they've made, who aren't getting the time of day. You're looking at an AJ Griffin. You're looking at their first round pick this year, who a lot of the Raptors fans wanted the Raptors to take, or in that spot, Kobe Buffkin. He's not playing at all, and you're thinking Grady Dick's not playing, but AJ Griffin was a great player, and he's just not seeing the floor. So I think you can sort of see, I don't know how many first round picks they currently have after the DeJounte trade, but I think maybe a swap from DeJounte, Siakam, and throw either one of Kobe Buffkin, or throw AJ Griffin in, or maybe both of them, maybe a swap instead of one of the two. I don't know how it would work, but I think that's sort of the semblance of the deal that's being offered to the Raptors at this current moment, if there is one. And thinking about that, I think we're getting enough value to be satisfied. DeJounte, he's not a shooter, but Siakam's not a shooter. He's not a scorer as Siakam is, but he's an equal defender. He's an equal passer. He's an equal shooter, like I said. And he's also signed up for the future, which Siakam isn't. And he's also, a couple years younger. So we're getting, he's like a couple of years older than OG. He's more with the window that this team currently has, because Siakam is going to be, he's going to be old and having a cane by the time this Raptors team has turned it around and is ready to compete again, hopefully with Scottie at the helm. But, maybe DeJounte Murray is going to be at the forefront of that window, maybe catching the end of it. So I think that could be a deal that the Raptors are looking towards. And over both of these games were maybe sort of a tryout to see how he would do. And at the Scotiabank Arena, he was fine. He had 17 in this the final game before I'm talking to you now, and 20 in the one that they lost. And, he contributes, like I said, he contributes defense. He's a good passer. He's a point guard. He doesn't shoot very well, but neither does Siakam. So I think it would work, and it would work even better because I don't know what we're doing with Schroeder at the moment. And so it would be nice to have an upgrade over there at that position. And, maybe we can throw in Gary Trent in the starting lineup instead of Schroeder, or maybe we can throw in Schroeder and try to get another player back for the Raptors. But it's just something to think about. I know there's other teams interested. I just think that's an available deal, and if we want to keep some talent around in this roster, it's one we might want to go for. Because you have to remember that we have to match the salary or trade him Siakam to a team where they can absorb a lot of it. So the Hawks have a player who we would be interested in and has a salary to match. So I think it's just something to think about. But once again, another 1-2 week for the Raptors. A disappointing week. But I think we're gonna have a lot of disappointing weeks in the future. In this game, looking down, like I was saying, impressive games from the three stars, the three solid guys for the Raptors against the Knicks and the Hawks before this one. And it's not gonna last. And somebody who drops the ball in this one, OG Anunoby, he was 3 for 8. He was fine. He just didn't really assert himself. The ball never really found him. Scottie Barnes played pretty well, actually, I will say. Pascal had a down game. He had only 15 points. Sort of a similar thing to OG. Just, there was a lot of turnovers in this one. Raptors had 14. And, it's going to catch up to you. And it did in this one. And, not everybody's going to have a good game every day. And that's the loss right there. And our defense wasn't really to clog up the holes that they had in the first game. So the Hawks put up a similar amount. And Trae Young was still dominant. Clint Capella still dominated Podol. Podol had a better offensive night. Still got dominated defensively and on the boards. I'm not sold on Podol either, as well as Dennis Schroeder. They're just both kind of regular replacement level starters, which I guess is what I should be expecting, but it's just not what you like to see, and you'd love to see improvement in those spots, especially from older guys. But that's sort of what you get. Achua with another decent shift off the bench, nothing too great. Boucher, similar, but he doesn't really have the same upside as Achua does. You see Achua once in a while, he's handling the ball, and it was pretty funny. It was like an Achua with the ball, and he was getting a screen from OG. It was an OG Achua pick and roll. And, maybe with OG that's an acceptable pick and roll, but with Achua having the ball, just the ball security between those two guys is just probably the two worst on the team. And you're looking at the league, and it might be the two worst in the league. And it was a turnover. And it was like, yeah, I could have seen that coming. I don't know why we're trying to fit Achua between two guys who are helping off of him, and he's trying to fit the ball to OG, and it gets stolen. Like, that's just going to happen every single time. But you have to figure out what you got in your players, and I understand that's maybe we're giving Achua a little bit of a leash here to see what he can do, because he has shown signs. And we've been saying this for a couple seasons now since we got him, that he's been showing signs, and he showed the most signs in that first year where we ended up making the playoffs. But he still has these glimpses where he's just one bounce off the dribble, dunking on you, or hitting a three once in a while every blue moon, finding the open man on a pass. It's the little things, but he shows it sometimes. He just needs to be more aggressive, and he needs to string it together more than he does already. It's just not enough at this current moment because he does have ball security issues. He's not a good shooter. Defensively, there's stuff you'd like to see improved as well. He's supposed to be a better defender than he is, but you get what you get, and he's improving incrementally game to game. But that's, like I said, that's going to happen. Gary Trent, another disappointing one, only 8 points. Get Gary Trent out of Toronto. I love Gary. He has had some great moments. I remember maybe it was last season or 2 seasons ago. He had just like 6 straight games of 30 plus, and it was really refreshing to see. And you're loving the deal that we got for him, just Norman Powell but younger, more time to develop, but he hasn't developed. And mainly I think that is an issue between him and Darko, because with Nick Nurse this was not happening, but he still wasn't developing. But then again, who did Nick Nurse develop? So whatever, but I do think we need to capitalize while he still has a semblance of value, because right now it's going to go quick. Anyway, coming up for the Raptors this next week here, we have a game against Charlotte, Denver, and then Philadelphia. And then I'll probably catch you after the Utah game, so it'll be a quick four games in a row. Charlotte should be a win, although we know what happened earlier on in the season. And then a tough game against Denver and Philadelphia. And then we'll see what happens against Utah on Saturday. But it'll be an interesting little week sort of wrapping up. I expect to be 1-3, 2-2, 3-1 I don't think is on the cards. 0-4 shouldn't be on the cards, but with this team, like I've been saying, who knows? But that's going to do it for the Raptors section here. I'm going to talk about the landscape in a break here for a little bit, and I'll be right back with you with that landscape check-in. And I am back here to talk about the NBA landscape so far. Once again, I continue to tell you about the top 3 in the East and how dominant they've been. The Magic were pushing themselves to be into that group, but it's still the Bucks, it's still the Celtics, it's still the 76ers. All of them on 3-game or more winning streaks. The Bucks with the 3-game winning streak, Celtics with 4, 76ers with 6, all 8-2 in their last 10. And these are the 3 teams, mix and match them, that you expect to be in that Eastern Conference Finals matchup. And, Celtics continue to be dominant at home. I mean, all 3 of these teams really do. The 76ers with the only team with a respectable away record, to be fair. Celtics 13-0 at home, 6-5 away. Milwaukee Bucks 13-2 at home, 5-5 away. The 76ers 8-4 away, with a similar dominant at home record, but it seems to be that home advantage is something that's really culminated throughout this season here. The good teams win at home. You look further behind, Magic 11-2 at home, 5-6 away. Knicks 7-3 at home, 7-7 away. And basically every single team that is currently in the Eastern Conference playoff and play-in tournament has a positive record at home. You look at the Raptors, okay, maybe not, 3-8 away though. So it's just that huge difference between the 2 records for basically everybody in the division. And it's, something when you look at the Western Conference, yeah, sure, it's there and it's always there, but it's just not something you think about with basketball as much as you think about it with other sports like soccer, or you think about it with football. But, this season, and even at the, in the Western Conference, you don't see this happen. The Rockets are obviously their own enigma, 11-1 at home, 2-8 away. I'll get to them later. They're on a 5-game win streak. But, like I said, the Knicks, Magic, and Heat, who are sort of tailing up those top 3, they're sort of the ones looking on the horizon, trying to fight to stay in that playoff group. They also are just so dominant at home, and it's a huge advantage when you're able to keep it down at home. And that when you look at the teams that aren't able to, and obviously these are the teams that are bad, so take it with a grain of salt as you will. But the Hawks, 3-7 at home, 7-8 away. Washington Wizards are equal, even on both sides. Hornets are even on both sides, and Pistons, even on both sides, 1-12, 1-12. They've lost 23 in a row. Yikes. Yikes, as the Spurs have finally won a game. But, as you look at those guys, and obviously the Pacers, the Cavs are sort of thinking, we should be in that group to be in the playoffs, and that's going to be something that's going to be really interesting to see as this season progresses, is who establishes themselves, not at the top, because that group is sort of has done that, but in that playoff mix outside of the top three. Because I think it will be a dogfight coming down to the end. And, it's a nine team race. Brooklyn Nets I don't really believe in as much as those other 8. And I definitely don't believe in the Raptors, who are currently in the 10 seed, actually, as the Hawks dropped their game today. So who knows what's going to happen, really. But it's a 9-team race. 8 teams I believe in to make the playoffs. And, it's going to be a wild one to see how the seeding pans out in the East. You look to the bottom of the East, the Hawks and Bulls are trying to fight for that spot for the Raptors. But realistically, none of these teams are worth anything. The 10 and 15 are both the Raptors and the Hawks. Bulls are 10 and 17. You should give up. All 3 of these teams, it's not worth it this season as a wrap. Tussle for draft position, I think. But the teams that have already tussled for it already have. The Hornets 7 and 17, Wizards 4 and 20, Pistons 2 and 24. With not a lick of chance of winning a game. You don't think they would ever again. So we'll see how it progresses. But, for those teams in the middle that have sort of been weary to bottom out, it might be too late for them. As we look to the West, it's not the established teams who are currently ruling it. The Timberwolves, Thunder, and Mavericks. You're going to count the Nuggets in there as well as part of that 4 right there. But the Timberwolves have really made themselves known as the best team in the West. The Thunder and Mavericks, teams at the beginning of the season wouldn't have expected to be in the 2 and 3 seed there. But they've really shown themselves to be worthy, to be, adversaries of the Nuggets, who, the defending champions and all that. Dominant at home, okay on the away, so they've got that box checked. But they seem human this year, and we'll see, because it only matters in the playoffs, and we'll see if Jokic will turn it up. I don't know if he'll want to be taking those extra 2 months again, but who knows? He'll have to do it anyway. Work's work. And obviously, Jamal Murray, compared to him, they're both going to be going for the playoffs and raring to go. So we'll see if they can turn it on and turn it up and sort of, separate themselves from the likes of the Mavericks and the Thunder and try to etch themselves with the Timberwolves with a couple of wins. But, they seem to be very content to be at their 4 seed at this moment. The Kings and Rockets are the other teams that are currently in those spots. And I was talking about the Rockets. They've won 5 in a row. Their insane home and away differential. It's really insane. So, if they've got a homestand coming up or if they got an away road trip, that could mean a lot for their playoff hopes. They've won 5 in a row. The Clippers right behind them have won 6 in a row. They've really turned their season around after really coming out slow. Paul George, Kawhi really, figuring their stuff out, and because it was worrisome. They were looking like the Hawks, looking like the Bulls, looking like the Raptors at a certain point, looking like the Warriors at a certain point, but they turned it around, and they've got themselves into a position where they can fight for these playoff spots and fight further up the leaderboards as people were expecting them to do. And they've actually passed the Lakers, in-season tournament champions. The Lakers sort of stumbled after then. They're still 15-11, a really impressive record. But it's, 8th, behind the Clippers, 8th in the West. And LeBron James continuing to put up monstrous numbers, AD as well. But, that's you can only play up to where you are, and the depth of the West continues to show itself. The Pelicans also 15-11, currently on the outside looking in of the playoffs, going to be in that dreaded second play-in tournament game against the Suns of all teams, who are, they've got Beal, they've got Durant. They're a really good team of and I didn't even mention Booker. I mean, they are just a quality team who have sort of fallen on hard times. They're 13-12 still, though, and nobody really there to pressure them at the back, so they're going to make the play-in tournament. But it's going to be a dogfight in the play-in tournament for the Western Conference. For the Eastern Conference, a dogfight for more playoff spots. But, the Warriors there leading up the back, they're pretending to do anything, but, I mean, we're going to have a talk about Draymond, because, yikes, man. Jeez. He's really putting a flat tire in this Warriors season, and he's put a couple flat tires in their season before, and I'm surprised that they're still being so jolly to support him. I guess they have to, because he's brought them 4 championships, but I will, say he was not the one to bring them those 4 championships. But this is not a Warriors podcast, so I'll leave it at that. I'll talk to you guys next week about it, because I do have some thoughts that I want to share, but maybe I want to cement them a little bit before then. And just looking at the bottom of the West as well, the Jazz 9-16, Grizzlies, Trailblazers, Spurs, another really fat, bottomed out Western Conference. Not really space to move any lower if you decide to bottom out at any spot, because these teams have already decided early, and like I've been saying, it's not good if you need to be bad, and we need to be bad because we have that top 5 protected pick that we need to get in the top 5 if we want to keep. And we're not going to be good enough to be, drafted any later than we were last year. So we'll have to see how it progresses. I think trade Siakam. I think if we can try to sneak Gary in that deal, try to get something back, some more value. But, those 2 guys, Pascal, not because of anything, performance related, just it's the end of an era and we need to, move on. And Gary, it's definitely performance related. So anyway, that's going to do it for the podcast this week. Thanks for listening as always. You can follow me on Twitter, do what you want to do. I'll be tweeting during the games and stuff like that. So if that's something you're interested in, go check that out. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next week after the 4-game stand. So see you then.